in 2010, and it was really steeping myself in the nutritional therapy of chronic disease where I started to really open my mind up to the possibility of a root cause. And so what we were seeing is we were juicing people into oblivion, so much kale that their eyes would turn green, and we were really dumping a lot of nutrient into these patients and finding that 40% of them weren't tolerating even small amounts of healthy food. More bloating, more gut discomfort, more inflammation, more morning stiffness, more joint pain, more fatigue, brain fog. And it's from some of the most incredible superfoods on the planet. We're making them worse. And so this was forcing us down this pathway of, well, what's the root cause of inflammation? If the food itself is inflammatory, what's the root cause of that? And so we were going down this pathway, and ultimately we stopped asking questions about the food and started to ask questions about the soil the food was grown in. And that's where the big paradigm shift in my career really happened. In 2012, asking the questions about the soil, a colleague of mine brings in a white paper on soil science. It was 90 pages long. Blew my mind. I didn't know there was 90 pages known about soil. And so we were diving into this paper, and I was paging through it quickly. And in the middle of one of the pages is a molecule that any other day of the week I may have just flipped past and not recognized. But that day, the blinders were taken off, and this molecule actually has this cluster of oxygen-hydrogen binding compounds at the end of it. This molecule has a stable carbon backbone and then all of this potential for exchange of electrons. And that's where my cancer research had been in, was mitochondrial redox potential, or reduction in oxidation or exchange of electrons. And so in that moment, suddenly realized that the soil might have the secret to the mitochondria. And the mitochondria are like bacteria that live inside of our cells. They metabolize or break down macronutrients into the only fuel that we really function on, which is this ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And that ATP molecule, the thought that it could be modulated by something in the soil was a huge boon for us. It took us a couple months to realize it was the bacteria in the soil that was making that molecule. And then it was closed the loop. Suddenly it was like, well, that's where life begins. It begins with this incredible interface of the soil and water and the exchange of electrons down at that micro level where life starts to begin. So doesn't it make sense that the root cause of disease would actually be the root cause of disease would be the loss of health, and health would be the communication network created by the bacteria speaking to the mitochondria, creating fluent speech. And when you look across the population right now, we're seeing diseases in every organ system becoming epidemic, right? You got diabetes, you got autism, you've got cancer, all of them rising at this very fast rate. And so the fundamental connection to all of these disease processes are down there, as you say, in the metabolism or breakdown of our food chain. And so it's fascinating that the nutrition world, which I love engaging in, and we're always traveling to all these nutrition conferences all over the world to speak, and we're passionate about it. But the reality is, even at our passionate level of expertise in the field, we keep talking about macronutrients and micronutrients on the plate as if that's what we're feeding ourselves. We are 3 times removed from the food on our plate. The human cells cannot take a piece of broccoli and do anything with it. The human cell cannot take a piece of kale and do anything with it. Can't take a piece of meat and do anything with it. You have to get through this complex system of not just the bacteria, but the protozomes and all these little breakdown machines that they make, enzymes that are deteriorating that food down into a bioavailable source of nutrient. And so your bacterial biome becomes this incredible delivery system. And it's fascinating to think that each bacterial population, each little species and subspecies of the bacteria are taking care of one little niche. But if you live in an environment where we're steeped in antibiotics and we're killing the biome through our farming practices, through our harvesting practices, through the food preparation and food processing, we narrow that biome down to maybe 1,000 or a couple thousand species. It doesn't matter what you put on the plate now, you don't have avenues for those unique micronutrients to be made bioavailable. We're literally starving as a population.
So one of the areas that contributes to this is, of course, the use of antibiotics. And people may not realize them. They've not been around a long time, a little more than half a century. And of course it has a decimating effect on your microbiome, and the toxins, the industrial toxins and chemicals are exposed to doesn't help anymore either. And then the industrial farming shift to really monocropping, to limit the amount of foods, different variety of foods that we're eating, and frequently, because they're using potent herbicides like glyphosate in the soil, you're decimating the soil microbes to begin with, so they're growing on a sterile environment, almost like hydroponics. Key here is the microbial diversity has been radically diminished.
Yeah. 83%, by population are being exposed to some sort of antibiotic drug per year. Amazing amount. But that's 4 times surpassed by the amount of antibiotic drugs that are being used in our farming practices. So it's almost 30 million pounds a year now being dumped into cattle, poultry, and the pork industries. And the U.S. is by far leading. Unfortunately, that is grossly outnumbered and outstripped by a drug or chemical in our environment that we don't call an antibiotic but functions as an antibiotic, and that's the herbicide. So the weed killers that are out in the world for crop production, the biggest one in the world right now is glyphosate. And this glyphosate chemical that was patented back in 1976 by a small company called Monsanto was targeting actually a pathway in the bacteria. And so it's called the shikimate pathway, and it blocks the ability of bacteria to make essential amino acids. And so you're taking away 3 to 5 really critical amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins, the building blocks that will become enzymes and the machines of your body. Those are being blocked at the soil level. So you spray herbicide out there, you're killing not only the bacteria in there, you're killing their ability to produce the essential nutrients that the food would then carry. We are now spraying 2 billion kilograms of glyphosate in the soils of the earth worldwide every year. And that number keeps doubling every 6 years. And so it's extraordinary, the chemical exposure we have that's wiping out and decimating the biome at the soil level, which then impacts the plant nutrient, which then, of course, whether it's the animal or the human that's consuming that, is deficient.